The issue of...
Okay, statement should be any second now. We got the gremlin Kevin talking. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's go ahead and listen to the gremlin.
Safety on the internet. Looking at internet security, Mr. Speaker, as a priority. Because by doing that, by providing the funds, by supporting it through legislative measures that establish the framework, it makes a difference. We want Canadians to know that as a government, we are there to protect their interests when it comes to information that's gathered on the internet, when it comes to cyber threats that are out there that are very real, that we will be there, Mr. Speaker, today and tomorrow to protect those.
This ends the daily routine of business. Moving on to declarations by members. Déclaration des députés. The Honourable Member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today on Human Rights Day, we celebrate the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a commitment to the dignity, equality and freedom of every person. Yet, women's rights are under attack, from the morality police in Iran to the silencing of women in Afghanistan and restrictive abortion laws in the U.S. These injustices remind us that women's rights are human rights. Canada's commitment to human rights extend beyond our border. At the UN this year, we announced initiatives to protect the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls. We continue to empower Afghan women through education, while sanctioning Taliban and Iranian officials responsible for gender apartheid. At home, Canada must continue to uphold our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The notwithstanding clause must only be used in exceptional circumstances, not at the whim of a populist leader. As Liberals, we stand firmly for our Charter and for equal rights for all. By joining with others to stand up for our rights, our future, right now, we can make the vision of dignity, equality and freedom for all people, including women, a reality. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, as we enter the holiday season, it's fitting to take a moment to express our gratitude to those who work to make... Oh, sorry, if I may start again. Something in my mouth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we enter the holiday season, it's fitting to take a moment to express our gratitude to those who work to make our community a better place. Today, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the community organizations in Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles for their commitment, generosity, and unfailing dedication. Your actions transform the lives of so many families and individuals. Whether supporting the less fortunate, organizing festive events, or creating spaces for sharing and mutual aid, you are the beating heart of our community. Thanks to you, smiles blossom, bonds are forged, and the holiday spirit shines through. Your work goes beyond just the actions we can see. It warms hearts and shows us the true meaning of solidarity. You are artisans of hope and your impact is priceless. On behalf of all the residents of Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles, I say a huge thank you. Let's continue together to make our community a place where no one is forgotten. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas filled with joy, peace, and precious moments with your loved ones.
The Honourable Member from Brampton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, last week Canada voted yes on the National UN General Assembly resolution entitled Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine. Canada joined 156 other nations calling for Israel's complete withdrawal from the Palestinian territories. The resolution demanded that Israel comply with international law, cease all settlement activities and evacuate settlers from the occupied Palestinian territory. Canada's vote reaffirmed our long-standing policy in calling for the realization of the rights of the Palestinian people, primarily the right to self-determination and the right to their independent state. Consistent with that policy, and to demonstrate support for the resolution, it is now time for Canada to recognize the state of Palestine.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. I rise today to pay tribute to Mr. Serge Godon, an exceptional member of our community in Trois-Rivières. Mr. Godon is what I call a super volunteer. He's been involved in numerous community activities in the Mauricie region since the early 1980s. He's been particularly involved with the Astérix Soccer Club in Trois-Rivières, the Sanctuaire de Notre-Dame-du-Cap, the Saint-Louis de France and Sainte Bernadette Scouting Associations, the Roland Leclerc Centre, Les Artisans de la Paix, and the list goes on. But the commitment that impresses me the most is that of Noël Ducoeur, formerly Noël du Pauvre, with which he has been involved for 44 years. And today it's with his children and grandchildren, all of whom were introduced to volunteering at a young age, that he continues to make a positive contribution to our community. Mr. Godon, we need more people like you all over Quebec, people who make a difference in people's everyday lives. Thank you for your exceptional involvement. The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard-Saint-Michel.
Speaker, this past weekend, as part of the Canadian delegation to the Vatican City, I had the honor and privilege to attend the induction of His Eminence Frank Cardinal Leo into the College of Cardinals, presided by His Holiness Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica. Cardinal Leo is the 18th Canadian to be inducted into the College of Cardinals. Among his many accomplishments and important positions held, I am particularly proud to say that he taught religion at Collège Reine-Marie, located in my riding. A Montreal-born shepherd of Italian descent, he faithfully served the Montreal Catholic community for over a decade before being appointed as Archbishop of Toronto. His elevation to Cardinal is a testament to his years of dedication and leadership in both local and global faith communities. Our delegation, led by the Minister for the Federal Economic Development Agency of Southern Ontario, played a key role in representing Canada, our communities, and all Italian Canadians in this important and historic event. Congratulations, Cardinal Leo.
The Honourable Member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
On Saturday, the Archbishop for Toronto was inducted into the College of Cardinals by Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica. I was honoured to attend the consistory with the Canadian delegation on behalf of the Leader of the Official Opposition. Now, witnessing this historic ritual was a deeply spiritual experience and a moment of profound inspiration, hope, and promise. Born in Montreal to immigrant parents, Cardinal Leo was ordained a priest for the Archdiocese of Montreal. He also served in the Holy See's diplomatic service, taught theology and spirituality. Appointed Archbishop of Toronto in 2023, he oversees major ecclesiastical institutions and Catholic organizations. As one of the youngest cardinals, he said the church outreach must start from the heart and the church must be a guide, but listen to what young people are saying. This is a proud moment for Canadians. Congratulations, Cardinal Leo. Viva Cristo Rey.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Richmond Hill is making important progress in affordable housing. The Richmond Hill Council recently adopted a community improvement plan for affordable housing and sustainable design, one of the 9 initiatives as part of the $31 million Housing Accelerated Fund agreement that the city has with the federal government. This new program addresses housing affordability and environment sustainability by providing incentives for developers to kickstart affordable rental housing projects with ensuring such housing is designed and operated to reduce greenhouse gas emission over the long term. This underscores how our Housing Accelerated Fund is empowering municipalities like Richmond Hill to meet local housing needs, and I am proud my city is moving forward with key housing initiatives such as this one. Together we are building a Richmond Hill where everyone and every family has a place to call home. Merry Christmas and happy holiday to all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise with a heavy heart to recognize the passing of Omar Zia. He was a loving father, husband, son, and brother. He dedicated his career to service in our community as a teacher in Peel schools, and most recently as principal in the Woodlands Secondary School. Omar was a mentor to so many young people in our community. He was breaking barriers, and he was an unwavering advocate for special education, for anti-racism, volunteerism, and youth. I had the privilege of working with him over the years, and you could see the compassion that he brought every single day to work. Last week, he sadly passed away at the age of 49. This weekend, we gather to mourn, share stories, and say goodbye to our friend and our brother. I will leave members with Omar Zia's signature question that guided his life's work. How will you make a positive impact today? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I also thank honourable members, those who had just encouraged all of them members to lower their voices during these statements, which are important statements to make. The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of the NDP Liberals, crime and chaos has taken over our streets and communities. This past Sunday, Alicia Brooks was tragically gunned down by her boyfriend, a known serial abuser. As she was taking her final breath, this monster stood over her dead body and yelled at her. The accused, despite a history of gun possession, breaking and entering, weapon prohibition orders, and assaulting other women, was allowed to live in a halfway house. This devastating loss is yet another glaring example of the NDP Liberal government's failure to protect Canadians by prioritizing criminals over victims. This criminal should have never been free to harm anyone. Canadians are urgently calling for bail reform to allow law enforcement to do their job and protect communities. Yet this Justice Minister ignores these claims and claims reform has already been achieved. How many more lives must be lost before this government finally takes action? Only a Conservative government will keep violent criminals behind bars and bring home safe streets.
The honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. November 29th marked a significant milestone in Surrey's history as Surrey Police Service officially took command from the RCMP. The transition reflects the community's evolving needs for public safety. I extend my congratulations to the Surrey Police Service as they assume this critical responsibility. At the same time, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the RCMP for their dedicated service to the City of Surrey. Their unwavering commitment to the safety and well-being of the residents has been exemplary and appreciated by all. As we move forward, let us honour the legacy of the RCMP while supporting Surrey's journey into a new era of community policing.
The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, I stand before this House to address an issue that undermines public trust and accountability, namely the member for Edmonton Centre and his involvement with Global Health Imports. A company he co-owned falsely presented himself as Indigenous-owned in order to exploit government procurement programs designed to benefit Indigenous communities. More troubling is that the Minister of Indigenous Services ignored clear warnings from her own auditors about rampant fraud and abuse. In the typical Ottawa Knows Best fashion, the minister prevented auditors from contacting businesses directly during verification investigations. Instead, they were forced to submit their inquiries to the department, which would then respond to the companies. Despite the weakened audit process, the minister has been forced to remove 1,100 businesses from the Indigenous Business Directory, highlighting the extent to which the Liberals have allowed things to spiral out of control. Canadians have had enough. It's time to allow voters to put an end to this incompetent government.
The honourable member from Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, when you think about it, this Parliament resembles Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. First, Canadians were visited by the ghost of the NDP past. It was the current NDP leader who made such a ruckus and tore up his costly NDP Liberal coalition agreement, declaring the Prime Minister was too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. Last night, the ghost of NDP present appeared. After vowing to defend workers' rights, even if that meant toppling the government, the NDP leader humiliated himself and his caucus by standing with the Prime Minister. So much for having the courage of their convictions. And we all know the ghost of the NDP future is busy securing his own pension at the expense of all Canadians. Bah humbug, I say. Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to put an end to this NDP Liberal fiscal nightmare. Only a carbon tax election and a common-sense Conservative government will bring home lower prices and better results for Canadian workers. And as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone, except perhaps this costly coalition. Merry Christmas, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, today on Human Rights Day, I'm pleased to recognize the important work of Scholars at Risk programs at Carleton University, University of Ottawa, and around the country. This is a vital initiative that champions academic freedom, human rights, and the protection of scholars facing threats worldwide. This program provides a safe haven at Canadian universities for hundreds of academics forced to flee their countries due to conflict, censorship, or persecution. Scholars at Risk program exemplifies Canada's commitment to education, equity, and global solidarity. By offering displaced scholars a chance to continue their work in a secure and supportive environment, this program contributes to the exchange of knowledge and ideas that strengthen both our academic institutions and our democracy. We must continue to support initiatives like Scholars at Risk that uphold Canada's values on human rights on the global stage. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vancouver, Kingsway.
I rise to honour one of Canada's finest public servants, our ambassador to Germany and former Premier of British Columbia, the late John Horgan. Raised by a single mom, John overcame great challenges to rise to the highest levels of public office. His political career actually started in this place, staffing NDP MPs. In 1991, he left to assume important roles in the BC NDP government, ending as Chief of Staff to the Premier. John entered elected office as an MLA in 2005 and ultimately became leader of the party, the official opposition, and a very popular Premier. Throughout, John carved a deeply impactful path. He had an uncommon touch. He had that rare ability to rise above partisanship and win the respect of his opponents. He was witty, kind, and positive. In my view, John was the best off-the-cuff speaker in Canadian politics. We extend our deepest condolences to John's beloved Ellie and their two sons. John, thank you. Your kind shall not pass this way again.
Yes.
All right, Pierre and Trudeau are in the House.
The honourable member for Drummond.
Trudeau's bench is empty.
The Iris Gala, our annual celebration of Quebec cinema, shone a spotlight on our homegrown talent again this year. Gatineau director Ariane Louis-XVI was the night's big winner for her film Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, which is much more than just its brilliant title. This dark comedy saw her win Best Film, Best Debut Film, and Best Screenplay with co-writer Christine Doyon. Monia Chokri won Best Director for The Nature of Love, while Theodore Perret and Ariane Castellanos were named Performers of the Year. But the highlight of the evening was the tribute to director Denis Villeneuve, who made us so proud of his talent, and it was so moving to see how much he was touched by the honour. The Iris Gala once again reminded us that, per capita, Quebec produces some of the finest filmmakers and artists in the world. And above all, it was a reminder of the importance of maintaining adequate funding for cinema from our public institutions, as this government has promised on numerous occasions. Long live Quebec cinema.
Holy smokes, everybody's gifted memberships. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Nicole. Really appreciate you guys, man, helping out the community. Thank you so much, guys.
The honourable member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Canadians now know that all of the NDP's tough talk is worthless. Yesterday, they voted against a non-confidence motion in the Liberals that used the NDP leader's very own words against him. It meant nothing when he said he'd ripped up his coalition deal with the Prime Minister. It meant nothing when he said, quote, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interest to fight for people. And it meant nothing when he looked striking union workers in the eyes and told them just last month, quote, if there's ever any vote in Parliament that in any way impacts your rights, we're going to vote no. Whether that's a confidence vote or not, whether that vote triggers an election or not, I'm telling the Liberals right now, you're never going to count on us if you're going to take away the rights of workers. Well, the NDP did exactly the opposite yesterday, and Canadians know why, because just minutes ago, the Liberals and NDP teamed up to cancel the idea of the election happening before the NDP leader gets his $2.3 million pension. Because here's the deal. The NDP leader gets his pension, the Prime Minister gets power, and Canadians get the bill.
Order, please. The honourable member for Cape Breton-Canso.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years, the Conservative leader has lectured Canadians about the virtue of tax cuts. Yet, when our government introduced a GST tax break to help Canadians, what did they do? The Conservatives voted against a tax break. It's like having a doctor who wouldn't accept their own medical advice. The Conservative leader calls himself a champion for affordability, but when the time comes, he turns his back and to give Canadians a real break. So who does the Conservative leader want a tax break for, Mr. Speaker? Well, that would be his rich corporate donors. Time and time again in this House, Mr. Speaker, when it's about supporting Canadians, we hear silly slogans, bumper sticker solutions. On this side of the House, we are absolutely 100% here for Canadians.
Questions
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is weak and he's lost control. He's lost control of our borders, of our freedom, of finances, and he's also lost control of his ministers. Indeed, we have learned that there is a squabble going on between the Minister for Finance, who wants a huge $40 billion deficit, and the Prime Minister, who wants a great deficit, a steroid-infused deficit that goes beyond $40 billion. Who's going to win this squabble, Mr. Speaker? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, when a government delivers dental care to seniors throughout the country, it's the Canadians who win. When the government delivers a tax break for Canadians over the next 2 months, Canadians win. When we are here to invest in food for children in schools, children and parents throughout Canada win. Canadians will not win when the Conservative leader votes against all these measures and refuses to help Canadians and only cares about his own future, not the future of Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Minister for Finance does not agree. She promised that deficits would not go beyond $40 billion. She stated that she was against the little Christmas electoral bauble to the tune of $6 billion. But the Prime Minister imposed this inflationist policy upon her. He admits that deficits fuel inflation. And that is the reason for which they have promised to keep deficits to $40 billion. Will he keep his promise? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the person in this room who is against helping Canadians is the Leader of the Opposition. He's voted against a tax break for Canadians. He voted against dental care, against food in schools, against investments in electric batteries, against investments that we are creating for clean energy and for more jobs in Canada. The Leader of the Opposition is against measures that actually help Canadians because all he cares about is himself. He doesn't care about Canadians.
Okay, here's English time.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This weak Prime Minister has lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending, debt, and inflation, and now he's lost control of his own cabinet. We've learned in the Globe and Mail today that his finance minister is having her people speak out against him. She wants a large deficit of $40 billion. He, on the other hand, wants an even larger deficit on steroids, bigger than $40 billion. We know that Canadians are going to lose from all this inflation, but which one of those two is going to win?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians lose when the Conservative leader votes against a dental plan for seniors. Canadians lose when he stands against a tax break for all Canadians over the next few months. Canadians lose when he blocks a school food program that's going to save parents $800 on groceries while putting more food in kids' bellies. Every single time the Leader of the Opposition gets up in this House, he stands against supports for Canadians, against growing growing the economy, against supporting a better future for all Canadians, because he's only in it for himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, it's not clear that the Finance Minister is actually in it with him. She said, according to the Globe and Mail, the Prime Minister's office has given internal direction for an aggressive and possibly costly policy agenda that threatens to blow past spending targets she has already publicly stated for the government. She promised the deficit would be capped at $40 billion, acknowledging that if it went over, it would cause even more inflation. That means hungry Canadians lined up at food banks. So once again, will the government meet the minister's promise to keep the deficit under $40 billion?
Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, while we once again hear the Leader of the Opposition talking down Canada's economy, talking down Canadians, the Bank of Canada, it looks like it's going to be decreasing interest rates once again because inflation is back down within the target range. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is also perplexed because he doesn't let his own MPs speak out on anything that he doesn't stamp and approve. He has people follow them around with tape recorders so that they don't speak to media about anything that he doesn't pre-approve. That's not being Canadians' voices in this place, Mr. Speaker.
You were doing so very well for the first number of questions in terms of members respecting that only one of their colleagues at a time had the floor. I'll ask members to please withhold their comments and let the one member speak and the one member answer. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has admitted that deficits drive inflation. His minister admitted the same thing. That's why she said the deficit would not go above $40 billion. That was her guardrail. They weren't going to smash into that guardrail. She's like a bus driver saying she's going to come just short of hitting that $40 billion guardrail. And then some crazy lunatic comes in, grabs the steering wheel, and jerks it sharp to the left through the guardrail. Does he realize there's 41 million Canadians that are going to go off the cliff in that bus?
It was so good.
Order. Order. Colleagues, the longer I take to get order in this place, the shorter question period in terms of the number of questions we'll have to ask. I ask for members, please, exercise discipline. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to talk down Canadians and the Canadian economy and indeed Canada, let me once again put it on the record. Canada is the best country in the world. And we, as Canadians, are stepping up, got us through the pandemic. Canadians got us through the challenge of high inflation. Canadians will keep building a positive future for themselves by being there and showing up for each other. Unlike the Leader of the Opposition, who's voted against every measure that has been put on the table to support Canadians over the past years and continues to be in it only for himself.
Block questions.
The Honourable Member for Belleville-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, in the context of bullying and religious practices in schools, where people are asked to move to leave space for prayer, the Minister for Immigration says that the Premier of Quebec is always attacking Muslims. He keeps talking about the freedom of expression, but he seems to find it difficult to tell the difference between Notre Dame in Paris and a park in Montreal. What does the Prime Minister have to say about this? Is he for or against this kind of statement? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we will always defend individual rights and freedoms and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the right to believe and to express oneself is something that our government will always defend. Of course, we will continue to protect these rights throughout our country. The Honourable Member for Bailleul-Chambly. For a bit more details, it's not a question of secularism versus one religion, but versus all religions. The vast majority of Muslims in Quebec are perfectly happy, integrated, and of course welcome in Quebec. The secularism of state institutions is there and is necessary for equality for all. Can the Prime Minister at least ask his minister to wait to see what the government of Quebec will do before he starts self-immolating in indignation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers, like all Canadians, cherish individual rights and freedoms, the freedom of expression, the freedom of belief and credence, the right and freedom to assemble. We have fundamental rights and freedoms that we will always defend. I understand that sometimes a community may be attacked, as we see sometimes with politics and policies throughout the country, but here the Liberal federal government will always defend individual freedoms.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, get this. The Conservatives bring in a tax cut for the richest CEOs corporations, costing Canadians $60 billion, but they vote against taking the GST off of home heating and diapers. And the Prime Minister sided with them. Why does the Prime Minister side with the Conservatives and big corporations against working people?
I think that towel is a bit too tight today.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we were equally puzzled when the Conservatives voted against a tax break for Canadians for the next few months. People are facing challenges right now, counting their pennies at the grocery store as they try to make ends meet. And this Parliament stepped up to deliver a tax break for all Canadians, but the Conservative leader forced his MPs to vote against a tax break for Canadians. So even though he wanders around the country talking about taxes, hanging out with certain questionable diagolon folks, he continues to vote against the interests of Canadians.
We're back to diagolon again?
Alors, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please. Order. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Dead.
Mr. Speaker, make it make sense. The healthcare system is collapsing and the Prime Minister is sitting on his hands.
Come on, why are we muting the mic, man?
Colleagues.
I can't quite hear what the Honourable Member is currently saying. Order, please. I ask the Honourable Member for Burnaby South to start his question again.
Prime Minister's excuses instead.
Make it make sense, Mr. Speaker. The healthcare system is collapsing and the Prime Minister is sitting on his hands. Currently, 7 times out of 10, François Legault encourages Quebecers to pay for their healthcare. Does the Prime Minister find this acceptable? If so, why? And why is he abandoning people? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will always respect provincial jurisdictions. We have also invested $200 million. We will invest $200 billion over the next years in healthcare throughout the country to deliver a greater number of general physicians with stronger healthcare, better mental healthcare, and better support for our workers. We are working for the healthcare system. We are here to defend our public healthcare system, and we are here to work hand in hand with provinces who want to deliver for better healthcare for all.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
We know the Prime Minister has lost control of spending, and now we see he's lost control of his own minister. We have a finance minister who won't tell us what the deficit is, and a Prime Minister who doesn't think about monetary policy, and that seems like a match made in heaven. But then again, maybe not. The Globe and Mail reports that, quote, tensions have risen between the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Minister's department, saying that the current dynamic appears to be similar to what happened with Bill Morneau before he quit. The Prime Minister bullies females and he bullies finance ministers, and now he's bullying a female finance minister. How much longer is she going to put up with that?
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
Members to take their seats. The honourable member from Lakeland, I'll ask her, please, to not take the floor unless recognized. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker,
oh, no.
On this side of the House, we are united in working for Canada and Canadians.
We're united. That's why you have a caucus revolting against you.
Colleagues, the chair has stood up for longer than a minute, which would be one question. I'm going to ask members to control themselves. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are united in working hard for Canada and Canadians. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, the only would-be bullies in this House are directly opposite. But I am very comfortable standing up to them. I look forward, together with my colleagues, to tabling the Fall Economic Statement on Monday in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. Order.
Being here to experience that.
The honourable member. The honourable member for Thornhill.
So awkward. I don't know why the finance minister takes all of this abuse from the Prime Minister. She told Canadians that the deficit wouldn't go past $40 billion. That was her own self-imposed guardrail. Now she says everything's fine as her political career collapses, and so does her credibility, all because of this Prime Minister. 5 senior Liberal veterans and 3 political staffers confirmed to the Globe that the tensions have risen between her office and the PMO over spending. These are the same people who last summer said that she couldn't communicate. We know what the Prime Minister thinks of her, but why does she still have confidence in him?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are united. And on this side of the House, we recognize what a privilege it is every single day to work hard for Canada and Canadians and to defend the national interest. That is what we are focused on every single day. And I would urge the MPs opposite to remember, this is a challenging time in Canada and the world. It is not a time for cheap partisan games.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
It's the finance minister who said over and over again that she would not go over her self-imposed guardrail of a $40 billion deficit. Now the parliamentary budget officer says that's yet another broken Liberal promise. We have no idea who's in the driver's seat anymore, driving Canadians through that $40 billion guardrail off of a cliff as they pay more in inflationary spending on the backs of struggling Canadians. What we do know is that Canadians ought to take her driver's license away. I can give her another opportunity to prove that she can communicate. She can stand up here and tell us what the deficit is at the moment.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to tabling the fall economic statement in this House on Monday. And in the fall economic statement, we will show that the government is maintaining its fiscal anchor, specifically reducing the federal debt as a share of the economy over the medium term. In addition, I expect the debt to GDP ratio we projected in the spring budget for fiscal year 23-24 will be met. Canada has the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, the lowest deficit in the G7. This is good news for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Unable to table a single balanced budget in 9 years, unable to keep the promise to keep the deficit under 40 billion, the Finance Minister is above all unable to convince her leader to abandon inflationary spending. There are major tensions between these two, according to the Globe and Mail. The Prime Minister is losing control of public finances, borders, his caucus, and even his cabinet. Can he do any good and at least tell us how much the deficit exceeds the announced $40 billion? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling the fall economic statement next Monday in this very House. And in this economic statement, we show that the government maintains its budgetary anchor. More specifically, reducing the federal debt on average in the economy. I expect the debt-GDP ratio that we've forecasted to be respected for 2023-2024. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance waits until the eve of the end of the parliamentary session to table her economic update. We've seen more courageous people in this House because bad news awaits. And the Globe and Mail tells us that the Prime Minister wants to radically increase spending and that his Finance Minister is failing to make him see reason. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said it. The deficit will be much higher than the $40 billion announced. How big is the deficit? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I am over the moon that the member across the way quoted the Parliamentary Budget Officer, because it's he and his analysis that concluded, and I quote, that the current budgetary policy is viable and sustainable in the long term. That's what the PBO said, straight from the PBO's mouth, which is objective. That's the truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Well, the truth is that there's disorder in public finances, tension at the borders, discord in cabinet, dissatisfaction within his caucus. Canadians are tired of this worn-out, inefficient and spendthrift government. Even his finance minister no longer gets along with him, according to the Globe and Mail. It is time for him to ask the real question. There's enough to do work. How high and how big is the deficit? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling the economic statement next Monday here in this very chamber. And in this fall economic statement, we show that the government will maintain its budgetary anchor. It will reduce its federal debt level in the economy in the medium term. The debt-GDP ratio that we forecasted for 23-24 will be maintained. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. 3 Chilean asylum seekers escaped from the Laval Immigration Holding Centre. These are people who are linked to international organised crime and are subject to removal orders. These 3 escapees join a long list of nearly 750 asylum seekers in Quebec who who are inadmissible for security reasons, but whom the federal government is not deporting. We're talking about people who are putting the public at risk. How can the government justify such huge loopholes in the monitoring and deportation of asylum seekers with criminal pasts? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, of course we share the concerns of our colleague when it comes to the circumstances of what happened at the Laval Immigration Holding Centre. I've asked the CBSA to immediately examine and revisit the security measures in this holding centre. We tripled the number of guards. We changed protocol with regards to the access of certain people to certain parts of the holding centre, and we will continue to make sure that this situation will not happen again. The Honourable Member for Avignon-la-Métis, Matane-Matapédia. The 750 nationals with criminal pasts that the federal government is unable to deport from Quebec are just the tip of the iceberg, Mr. Speaker. In 2020, the Auditor General denounced the CBSA's failure to investigate the whereabouts of people who were supposed to be deported. I quote Ms. Hogan, at least 70% of cases involving criminals had not been reviewed annually, and 75% of cases involving failed asylum seekers had not been reviewed every 3 years as they should have been. Mr. Speaker, clearly, the agency is unable to act. Is it because of a lack of resources or a lack of political will? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, it will come to no one's surprise. It's not one or the other. It's a circumstance that many other countries have seen in the world with an increase of asylum seekers. However, we do accept the responsibility under our statutes. We must make sure that certain people who are a threat for Canada's public safety, make sure that they are detained before they are sent out of Canada. And that is exactly the kind of investments that we're doing now, and we'll continue to guarantee the safety of everyone.
Oh, someone's trolling. Someone's heckling up in the stands. Someone's heckling. You can see all the MPs are looking up to see what this person's saying. Someone's heckling. They're being escorted out right now. I wish we could hear this. But it's not just Greg that will do this. It's all speakers will mute the mic because they don't want this person heckling to get any attention. Looks like they've just been carried out by security. Yeah, don't they get thrown out for that? Yes, they do. Mic's back on, so obviously the person got escorted out.
The Honourable Member for Avignon-la-Métis, Matane-Matapédia. The question of political will is still valid. The Globe and Mail reported last winter that since 2016, so barely a month after the new Liberal government came into power, 14,609 people had been issued deportation notices. Of these, 9,317 were still in Canada in May of 2023. Imagine, during almost the entire Liberal reign, 64% of inadmissible people were never even deported. At this point, deportations of people with a criminal past are virtually voluntary, it seems. Why would defying a deportation notice, even for years, be of no consequence under the Liberals? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, our colleague knows full well that deporting people without a legal status in Canada and who have violated criminal law is a significant responsibility that we accept, and we have to work with our police bodies, our law and order bodies. We are also working with our partners in a number of provinces to make sure that we can detain people who are a real threat for public safety with a view of expelling them from Canada, and I trust that we'll be able to continue this work.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
The spending spree spat between the finance minister and the prime minister has spilled into the public, according to the Globe and Mail. The PBO confirmed the prime minister forced this finance minister to blow through her $40 billion fiscal guardrail promise, taking Canada's finances off a cliff. And now he wants her to bury the bad news of their deficits in the dark days of December next Monday. How bad is the deficit?
Yeah, literally. How much interest are we paying on the debt?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. I'll ask the Honourable Member to please take his seat. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I was actually about to ask, are they giving out Christmas presents for alliteration? I mean, we're supposed to be talking about serious issues here. I am, though, glad that the member opposite has spoken about the parliamentary budget officer, because just a few weeks ago, in his independent analysis, the parliamentary budget officer concluded, and I quote, "Current fiscal policy in Canada is sustainable over the long term." That's the conclusion of the PBO that was just cited by the member opposite, and it's good news for Canadians.
No, it's not. It's not good news.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Well, Canadians can't have Christmas because she can't do math. And the Prime Minister lost control of Canada's finances and forced this finance minister to cover their devastating deficit. The spending tensions between her and the Prime Minister will have her getting the bill no more treatment. And Canadians have to foot the bill for the spending spree separation. We know she already blew through her $40 billion fiscal guardrail promise. But what is the deficit number?
Yeah,
Just a number, please.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I do really look forward to tabling the fall economic statement in this House on Monday. And in the fall economic statement on Monday, we will show that the government is maintaining its fiscal anchor, specifically reducing the federal debt as a share of the economy over the medium term. In addition, I expect the debt to GDP ratio we projected in the spring budget for fiscal year 23-24 will be met. Canada has the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We have the lowest deficit, and this is good news for Canada and Canadians.
Thank you, Jim, for gifting 10, man. Appreciate you guys today. Everybody's been so kind this week.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, supported by the Bloc, the Liberal government is in full meltdown. The Prime Minister and his Finance Minister are at loggerheads, and both have lost control of the country's public finances. The Finance Minister has made a promise. The Liberal government's deficit will not exceed $40 billion. The Prime Minister couldn't care less about the consequences for Canadian families. A simple question. While he's still here, what is the deficit? Who won? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, Canadians will win. Why? Because our government is united. Our government is working all together to deliver the goods for Canadians. With dental care, with early childcare, with medicine for Canadians. We are here for Canadians, and we are proud to be here for them, and we do it as a team.
The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't even seem to want to listen to what the Minister of Finance has to say. There's infighting on the other side of the House. The Globe and Mail has said that 5 Liberal Party veterans and 3 political staffers have confirmed that tensions are growing between the Minister of Finance's office and the PMO. We know that the Minister of Finance really wants to keep things at her already high level of $40 billion for the deficit, but the Prime Minister wants it to go to an even more shocking level. Will the Minister of Finance keep her word and state that finally She's sticking to the $40 billion deficit. What is the deficit? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling the fall economic statement on Monday in this very House. And in the fall economic statement next week, we will show that this government is maintaining its budget anchors. It's all about reducing the proportion of the federal debt in the economy over the medium term. And the debt to GDP ratio that we stated in the spring budget will be respected. Thank you.
The honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Canadians are hurting, and we saw it expressed in the gallery today. Renters in Canada are facing exploitation and eviction because of corporate greed.
Shame on the Conservative.
Colleagues, I'm having difficulty hearing the question. It is not for the chair to agree or disagree with the content of the question, but to making sure that it does follow the rules.
You do all the time.
I'm asking members to please restrain themselves. The honourable member from Port Moody Coquitlam from the top, please.
Canadians are hurting, and we saw it expressed in the gallery today. Renters in Canada are facing exploitation and eviction because of corporate greed.
So you're right. Who was it that mentioned that they actually overheard that little tiny bit that person said before the mic got muted, the heckler? He was talking about homelessness. And I guess now Bonita, this NDP MP, is sticking up for that heckler.
I'm going to invite the honourable member to rephrase her question. I just want to remind the member that we should not make reference to what has or has not happened in the galleries today to ensure that Canadians, to ensure that this behaviour is not repeated. The honourable member from Port Moody Coquitlam.
Canadians are hurting, and we saw it expressed in the gallery today.
Make her withdraw. Make her withdraw. She just did it again. She just doubled down.
Again. Order. And I hope the honourable member can understand and can hear my voice when I do say that we should not make reference to what has happened in the gallery or not happened in the gallery. And I'll invite the honourable member to rephrase her question for the last time before I move on.
Canadians are hurting, and we saw in Ottawa today that it was expressed around homelessness.
Yes, that's right.
Renters in Canada are facing exploitation and eviction because of corporate greed. It's so bad a class action lawsuit has started against corporate landlords, accusing them of price fixing using the AI program YieldStar. For months, New Democrats have called on the Liberals to protect renters. But the Liberals and Conservatives chose to protect corporate profits over people. Why is the Prime Minister letting down renters and caving to corporate landlord CEOs?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, no one in this country is choosing to be homeless. No one is choosing to live in an encampment. We know that the cost of housing has gotten too high. That's why we are putting billions of dollars of investments on the table to help build out more affordable housing, to help community entities actually provide services to people who do not have a roof over their head. What's fascinating, Mr. Speaker, is the Conservatives seek to make a joke out of a very serious issue such as homelessness. We're going to be willing to do the hard work to build more homes, including the most vulnerable. And as the jeering continues, Canadians should be ashamed of the behaviour of the Conservative Party, who use homeless people as props in this country.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley. Colleagues, The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, in January, Air Canada will become the latest big airline to charge junk fees for basic services like checked baggage. And the minister's reaction to this? She's taking a page from the industry minister's playbook and going to sit down with the CEOs and ask very nicely if they would please change their ways. It didn't work for grocery prices, and it's not going to work for these airlines' junk fees. It turns out the minister has the regulatory powers she needs to stand up for Canadians that are tired of being gouged. Will she use it?
Hear, hear. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board and Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member opposite actually has it inaccurate. If I could clarify, we are extremely concerned with airlines putting forward junk fees, and the Minister of Finance has specified this in successive budgets. I will be speaking with the airline executives. I will be calling them out for charging these extra fees. Canadians want excellent service, not excellent fees, and our government will be standing for passengers and Canadians every step of the way.
The honourable member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians received great news last week about a temporary tax break we are implementing for all Canadians. Our government is exempting essentials like groceries, snacks, children's clothing, and gifts from the GST starting December 14. This will deliver tangible and immediate support to Canadians struggling with the cost of living. Can the minister share why all members of this House should support this tax break?
Judy. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would really like to thank my neighbour, the Honourable Member for Davenport, for that great question and for her very hard work on behalf of her constituents. It's expensive to raise a family, especially around the holidays, so our government is stepping up to support Canadians by giving them a tax break. This includes children's clothing, diapers, and car seats. And with the holidays coming up, we're also making children's toys, puzzles, books, and board games tax-free. For a party that claims to want to lower taxes, the Conservatives sure seem keen on taxing Canadians' holidays. Why won't the Conservatives support them?
The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister said that the government would not crash through the deficit guardrail. The Globe reports today that all the Prime Minister's new spending is upending the deficit target and that finance officials view it as unwise and making little sense. Tonight, we vote on $24.8 billion in new spending. So will the Finance Minister tell us why we should vote for something that upends the deficit target, that is unwise, and that makes little sense?
Yeah, way to go!
Here, here. Well said. I like
the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I do look forward to tabling the fall economic statement in this House on Monday. And in next week's fall economic statement, we will show that the government is maintaining its fiscal anchor, specifically reducing the federal debt as a share of the economy over the medium term. In addition, I expect that the debt-to-GDP ratio we projected in the spring budget for fiscal year 23-24 will be met. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the Globe also reports that the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister are at odds over all this new spending. It reports that the Prime Minister's office has viewed the Finance Minister as ineffective in communicating, and also stated that a senior Liberal said that the current dynamic appears to be similar to what happened to Bill Morneau before he resigned in 2020. John Turner resigned as Finance Minister in 1975 when he was at odds with the Prime Minister. Simple question. Does the Finance Minister still have confidence in the Prime Minister? The
Honourable... Order. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Order. The Honourable Member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
According to the Globe and Mail, the finance minister herself said the radical Liberal spending risks blowing past her promised fiscal guardrails. So she has a choice. She can break rank and join the Liberal minister graveyard, like the former finance minister Bill Morneau, or she can abide by this weak prime minister and drive Canadians off of a fiscal cliff. Which one?
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what we are seeing from the Conservatives is an attempt to distract from the fact that when they have an opportunity to support a tax reduction for Canadians, they actually voted against it, Mr. Speaker. They talk out of one side of their mouth and do the absolute opposite all of the time, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we are absolutely united in our support for Canadians. And over the holidays, we are proud to offer them a GST holiday to make sure that they can have toys and clothing and car seats and diapers at a reduced price for their children, and that's what matters to us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil, please, to not take the floor. The Honourable Member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Mr. Speaker, you can't spend your way out of debt. The fact that the Conservatives have to say that to the finance minister speaks volumes to why we have record high usage of food banks in this country. She has a choice today, and everyone knows there's tension. She promised a guardrail of $40 billion, which in itself is outrageous. Bill Morneau, the former finance minister, was in the same position, and he wouldn't abide by that weak prime minister, and he quit. The question is, will she have the courage to do the same and stand up for Canadians, not that prime
minister? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the only people who are engaging in bullying tactics in the House are the members of the Conservative Party of Canada. Mr. Speaker, if they truly cared about supporting Canadians through these tough times, they would have voted in favour of the GST tax break over the holidays. But this is par for the course with those members opposite. They cry crocodile tears, but whenever it comes to helping Canadians, they oppose them. Whether it's the school food program that is already going to be supporting 200,000 kids across this country, the Canada Child Benefit that puts up to over $7,000 a year in the pockets of Canadian families, they oppose it. Mr. Speaker, we are united in our support for Canadians, and we will continue to stand up against those.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, we've had the Arrive Can fiasco, but now we have the fiasco at the CBSA. This was a customs clearance application, and it broke down 22 times in the first 30 days of its use. It completely paralyzed imports and was a total failure, despite the fact that it cost 50% more than planned. With inconclusive tests and hidden documentation, the Trade Committee has unanimously, including the Liberals on the committee, asked the AG to look into this. Will the minister listen to his own colleagues and agree to the AG investigation? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to correct my colleague, but when he says that the committee adopted a motion unanimously, we would have thought that would include our Liberal colleagues, which confirms the fact that we want parliamentary committees to stand up and respect the independence of the Auditor General as well. If she decides to look into this, of course the government will be happy to look into it. We expect the AG to do excellent work as she always does. The honourable member. Well, yesterday when the minister answered, he praised our border agents for their hard work, and we also agree that they should be praised for that, but we're not so sure about their bosses and their offices. The CBSA was already under the spotlight with ArriveCan, but today the problem is the CARM application, with all of its various budget and functioning problems. Because ArriveCan at least worked, CARM doesn't even work, and if it takes Ottawa as long to fix this as it took to fix the Phoenix pay system, our businesses will have hell to pay. Will the minister do something about this?
L'honorable ministre de Sécurité publique.
The Honourable Minister of Public
Thanks, Gordon,
Safety.
for the 10.
Mr. Speaker, we are always looking for solutions. As my colleague very well knows, this system replaced an outdated 36-year-old system, which might have broken down at any moment on a broad scale. It is used to evaluate $40 billion in taxes and tariffs every year. This government is always looking to secure a system that is so important for the Canadian economy. We quickly deal with all problems in order to give importers quick answers, and we will continue to do so.
The honourable member for Lambton Kent Middlesex.
Speaker, the NDP Liberal government recklessly pushed through their costly temporary GST tax trick that's going to hurt our small businesses, and they're trying to buy votes with a $250 check. But the finance minister's own department called this over $6 billion spend, quote, fiscally unwise, and described it as making no fiscal economic sense. Because of spending like this, we know that the finance minister is going to blow through her $40.1 billion fiscal guardrail. So will she confirm that her deficit won't be a penny over $46 billion?
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, this is coming from a member whose leader calls our government supports big fat government spending. When it's time to step up, the Conservative Party never steps up to support small businesses. We have cut taxes for small businesses from 11% to 9%, saving small businesses $6.3 billion every single year. We have putting more money back into the pockets of small businesses through our Canada Carbon Rebate. That's $2.5 billion going out to 600,000 small businesses across the country. We will always be there to support them, Mr. Speaker.
Jim again with the gifted memberships. Thank you, man.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you know Canada is about to be sent over a fiscal cliff when the Liberals can't even do basic math. Mr. Speaker, that's why tensions are rising in the Liberal caucus. The finance minister is as unfit to lead as her boss. Maybe that's why the Prime Minister is making unilateral financial decisions. So will the finance minister continue to go blindly and continue to put Canada decimate our economy, or will she actually show some leadership and stick to her $40 billion fiscal guardrail?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, on this side of the House, we are putting Canadians first. That's right. That is what we have done for the last 9 years in understanding when times are tough, we are there for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, what we hear from Conservative members of Parliament is that when times are tough, they look to take supports away from Canadians, not to be there for them. We will not allow that to happen, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to be there for Canadians every step of the way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Charlebourg, Haute-Saint.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, according to the Globe and Mail, there is more and more tension between the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance about ideas like this electioneering vote-buying effort to reduce or to remove the GST over the holidays. And even federal public servants or their own staffers are saying that this $6 billion cost is fiscally imprudent. We know that the Prime Minister has completely lost control over the finances. Does the minister understand that she needs to say stop to this Prime Minister's crazed requests? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Well, as we've heard from the Minister of Finance on several occasions, this is a matter of fiscal accountability. Because here in Canada, we have the best fiscal record of any country in the G7, including the debt to GDP ratio, the deficit to GDP ratio, as well as debt interest costs. Interest rates are going down. Inflation is going down. Employment is going up.
Going down.
What's really irresponsible is to do as the Conservatives are doing.
What?
They keep repeating that it's hard for Canadians to get by right now, but they're actually trying to make their lives even harder.
The honourable member for Fleetwood Port Kells.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government made a great announcement to support Canadians over this holiday season because the holidays should be a stress-free period for Canadians. However,
we're going to ask the honourable member to start again. But order.
Yeah, ow.
But order.
He just grabbed his paper and threw it on the mic.
But this is a good time to remind all members to be very careful about objects that they put on their microphones, as it hurts the ears, which are the tools of our interpreters. The honourable member from Fleetwood Port Kells from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This isn't standing right there, Anyway, government did make that great announcement to support Canadians over the holiday season. Holidays should be a stress-free period for all Canadians, but for some, this isn't the case, as spending can be a source of difficulty for some families. So we have a plan for that, but that would be the plan that the Conservatives voted against. Could the minister share more details about our government's plan to put more money in the pockets of Canadians?
Liberals shouldn't be allowed to ask other Liberals questions during question period.
The Honourable
Just go out in the hallway and ask your fellow Liberal
Thank you,
MP.
Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for his question and also for the hard work that he does on behalf of his constituents and Canadians. We will always be there for Canadians, Mr. Speaker, for families and businesses in good times and in the hard times. Twice we've offered tax cuts to the middle class, and twice the Conservative leader has voted against them. Today, with the GST cut, we're providing even greater support for families and businesses. You'd think with all the slogans and the childish shouting, this would be a no-brainer for the Conservatives, but they voted against this tax cut. They vote against Canadians. We are here for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's.
The Globe and Mail is reporting a big fight between the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. They have blown through every deficit target every year, but apparently we ain't seen nothing yet. Just like what happened to the last Finance Minister, the Prime Minister does not care about this Finance Minister breaking her promise that the deficit would not be more than $40 billion. But hey, who cares when the Prime Minister fears for his political life? Simple question. Is the deficit more than $40 billion? Yes or no?
Good question.
Order. The honourable member, the honourable minister, and leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, what we see from Conservative members of Parliament is their attempt to distract from the fact that when given the opportunity to vote for a tax break for Canadians, they voted against it. They're traveling across the country saying that they're going to cut taxes, but at the very first opportunity to do that, they say no. And Mr. Speaker, this is actually a pattern of behavior because over the past 9 years, when we have brought forward other tax cuts for the middle class or benefits for Canadians, what do, Mr. Speaker? They vote against them. On this side of the House, we're going to stay focused on Canadians and delivering for them in their time of need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's.
Well, there you have it, a real-life Thelma and Louise. The Prime Minister driving Canadians through the Finance Minister's deficit guardrail into the abyss. The Prime Minister is throwing the Finance Minister under the bus. And now, in the Globe and Mail, senior Liberals are throwing the Prime Minister's vote buying under the bus. It truly is hard to imagine a deficit number so bad that even senior Liberals are complaining. So what's the deficit number that is so large that even leaking Liberals are appalled?
The honourable order. The honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I've been listening patiently during this entire question period, and I've heard a lot of attacks of the Minister of Finance. I'll tell you why we support that incredible female leader, because what does she do? She empowers women around this country. How does she do that? She puts in place programs like a Canada Child Care program.
Get out of your bathtub.
I'm going to ask. The Speaker stood up because the honourable member from Peterborough Kawartha was I'm going to ask the honourable member from Peterborough Kawartha, please, to withhold herself while we listen to the honourable minister. The honourable minister. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, I've been listening patiently for all of question period about attacks of the current finance minister. I'm going to tell you what a strong female leader looks like. A strong female finance minister empowers women to participate in our economy. How do you do that? You put in place and have the courage to put in place something like a Canada childcare program that has resulted in 85% women's labour force participation rate in this country. That is an all-time high. That is what a feminist looks like. That is what a great woman leader looks like. That is what a great finance minister looks like. And that's somebody who will stand behind every single day in this chamber.
Yeah, right. That's what a good finance minister looks like. Yeah, right. That's what a journalist reporter looks like.
Order. The honourable member for Charleswood St. James, Assiniboia Headingley.
The Globe and Mail has reported that tensions are on the rise, that this weak Prime Minister is forcing the Minister of Finance to spend even more. The Minister promised Canadians, out of her own mouth, the deficit would not exceed $40 billion. Now it's clear she's crashed right through that guardrail. Canadians deserve to know how much the deficit is. Don't make them wait until Monday. Tell us the number now.
Yeah, way to go.
We're here. Tell us the number.
Once again, I'll just remind all members to point the question through the chair. Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that member knows very well that we are bringing forward the fall economic statement next Monday, and we are very much looking forward to the Finance Minister presenting that to this House. And we are exceptionally proud of the record of this government, of which the Finance Minister has been an incredible leader in, Mr. Speaker, whether it comes to the Canada Child Benefit, childcare for Canadians, a national school food program, supporting Canadians and businesses through the worst pandemic in our lives, Mr. Speaker. She was at the helm of that, led us through those difficult times, and we know that together we will continue to support Canadians and lead them through these tough times.
The honourable member for the Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Minister of Foreign Affairs announced a new Arctic foreign policy. It reflects the reality of our region and it was developed in partnership with Indigenous governments as well as Arctic and territorial partners. It strengthens our work here at home and our engagement with other nations, northern nations like Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and the United States. They are Canada's like-minded Arctic partners and are all apparently countries that Conservatives have never heard of. For Northerners and Indigenous people who call the Arctic home to all Canadians, can the Minister tell us why she launched the foreign...
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to thank the MP for the Northwest Territory. As the world is getting tougher, we need to get tougher. Yes. This Arctic foreign policy builds on the biggest investments in our defense in generations, more than the Conservative ever did. It puts people in the North first, allowing Indigenous peoples, particularly Inuit and Northerners, to be at the center of international relations affecting them. Russia and China are working together against our interest in the Arctic. This is something that we take seriously, contrary to the Leader of the Opposition that is not serious about defending our North and trivializing Northerners.
The Honourable Member for Foothills, please. I'm going to ask members to not have a conversation unless they want to take it behind the table. The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
Kidd Mine in Timmins has been an economic driver in the north for the last 60 years, but the end is near, and we need to prepare for what comes next. Northern Ontario is no stranger to heartbreak, mine and mill closures, but it doesn't have to be this way in Timmins. We have a huge opportunity to shift investment to the Timmins Nickel project. That's a project that ticks all the boxes: critical minerals, job creation, and supportive infrastructure. So to the minister, will he commit to work with the city now to ensure that there are no delays in transitioning Timmins to a stronger and more sustainable future?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
I want to thank my honourable colleague for the question. Certainly, critical minerals, including very much the Crawford Mine, offer enormous opportunities across this country. That is certainly true in Northern Ontario. The Crawford Mine is something that is a very important project moving forward. We just announced an investment of the Critical Minerals Infrastructure Fund in the Crawford Mine, and I'm certainly very happy to sit down with the folks in Timmins to have that conversation.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, late Friday, we learned that the Vista thermal coal mine expansion in the Rocky Mountains is going ahead without an impact assessment. This despite the fact that the former minister promised me twice over the past 4 years that they would do that. Albertans don't want coal mining in the Rocky Mountains. This government pretends to care about our environment, even while making false promises to stop mining thermal coal and stop polluters in our beloved Rocky Mountains. When will the minister protect our Rocky Mountains instead of protecting the profits of billionaires?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. As she is well aware, the Supreme Court last year directed the government to review some of the elements under the Impact Assessment Act of Canada, which is what we've done. We still have a commitment to phase out coal thermal export by 2030, Mr. Speaker, and she also knows that 10 Indigenous...
And I ask the Honourable Member who just asked the question to please, who had an opportunity to ask the question, to please extend that same opportunity for the person to answer it. The Honourable Minister can take it from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague is well aware, the Supreme Court of Canada directed the government to make some changes to the Impact Assessment Act of Canada last year, which is what we've done. We still have a commitment to ban the export of thermal coal by 2030, Mr. Speaker. And she also knows that 10 Indigenous communities are supporting this project, which is why, in the end, the Impact Assessment Act, the Assessment Agency of Canada, decided that an evaluation was not necessary. Thank you.
Good job.
Colleagues,
and so comes the end of question
during
period.
a statement from members, the Honourable Member from Vancouver Kingsway was making a statement in which a member had unwittingly walked in front of the camera. As it is normal on our tradition, we allow the Honourable Member to make a statement again. The Honourable Member from Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honour one of Canada's finest public servants, our Ambassador to Germany and former Premier of British Columbia, the late John Horgan. Raised by a single mum, John overcame great challenges to rise to the highest levels of public office. His political career actually started in this place, staffing NDP MPs. In 1991, he left to assume important roles in the BC NDP government, ending as Chief of Staff to the Premier. John entered elected office as an MLA in 2005 and ultimately became leader of the party, the official opposition, and a very popular Premier. Throughout, John carved a deeply impactful path. He had an uncommon touch. He had that rare ability to rise above partisanship and win the respect of his opponents. He was witty, kind, and positive. In my view, John was the best off-the-cuff speaker in Canadian politics. We extend our deepest condolences to John's beloved Ellie and their 2 sons. John, thank you. Your kind shall not pass this way again.
I understand there are a couple of points of order. The Honourable Member from Nanaimo Ladysmith is rising on her feet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent
No.
for the following motion.
that the House A recognize that today, on the International Day for Human Rights, the Nobel Committee has awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for 2024 to Nihon Hindankyo, the Japanese grassroots organization of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha. Acknowledge that Hibakusha has worked tirelessly for decades to raise awareness of the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapon use. C. Recognize the ongoing relevance of their message in a world where the threat of nuclear weapons remains a pressing concern. D. Affirm that nuclear disarmament is a crucial step towards ensuring global peace and security. And E, Mr. Speaker, encourage the government to take concrete steps to honor this award, including enhanced engagement with the TPNW, participation in international disarmament efforts, and collaboration with civil society to advance the cause of nuclear abolition. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried.
Let's see what Scheer has to say.
I see that the honourable member from Regina Capella is also rising on a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. During question period, there was a disturbance in the gallery, and it was very alarming to see the NDP member for Port Moody Coquitlam almost immediately not just reference it, but it seemed to have been incorporated into her question. It was a prepared question. You could tell it was prepared because even after you admonished her for pointing out the disturbance in the gallery, she could not adapt and repeated it 3 times. Now, it seems like this was a coordinated event, that someone was invited into the chamber and the member knew that there would be such a disturbance. So I'd ask that you look into the matter, Mr. Speaker, and report back to the House as to how this individual gained entry into the gallery, on whose behalf was this person invited. This comes on the heels of a security scare today in the Wellington building and a protest in the Confederation building last week where members of Parliament were impeded access to their offices, threatened, and forced to face toxic behavior. This is a pattern of behavior we're seeing from the NDP. As we come to the end of this session, Mr. Speaker, it's incumbent upon all members to respect the security and safety of this place.
Yeah. Someone just yelled that's not a point of order. It is. That's a very clear point of order.
I see that the honourable member from New Westminster Burnaby is also rising on the same point of order. The honourable member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's not surprising to me with the Conservatives who allowed for 3 weeks the occupation of downtown Ottawa, including impeding MPs coming to the West Block consistently, that they would raise this. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, the member from Port Moody Coquitlam properly corrected her question. I would suggest for Conservatives who are repetitive not only with one member, but their entire question period lineup often violates these standing orders and are very repetitive, that they should actually walk the talk and they should try to offer something more to Canadians during question period.
I see that the honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam is rising on the same point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And since the member from Regina Capel has decided to be a mind reader, I just wanted to clarify that although the Conservatives are used to being told what to do, I am not. And Mr. Speaker, if you would so kindly check the notes that I gave to the pages here, you will see that I have handwritten notes about the very, very important interventions in Ottawa today from people around homelessness in this country and how desperate folks are. So I would just raise that, Mr. Speaker, that I do have a mind of my own, unlike the Conservatives.
Exactly.
I thank honourable members for their interventions, and the chair will come back to this matter if necessary. It being 3:33, the House will now proceed to the taking of deferred recorded division on the motion of Ms. Landsman relating to the business of supply. Call on the members.
Okay. So that's it. Now they're just going to get to a vote on what is the motion that they're talking about? I believe it's the House of Commons. I had the projected order of business up. This is regarding the federal sales tax on new homes. That's what I thought it was. I believe this is the vote now. They'll probably get to it, and I have a feeling it's not going to pass just because of the amount of votes the Liberal NDP have. I'm just going to read a couple chats here. Part of Seku was hilarious. They went mad with points of order, but then they went in camera. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that Seku went in camera for most of it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today for question period. I really appreciate you guys being super extra generous this week. It's that you guys are gifting memberships to the community. We've got lots of new members in the chat. We had Nicole gift memberships. We had Richard, Gordon. We had Jim, Pokey with the super chat. We had Jim again. Really appreciate you guys. Yesterday and today, you guys have been really good with helping out the channel and helping out the community. And yeah. Just tomorrow's going to be really spicy. You guys know Wednesdays are excuse me, sorry. Wednesdays are Prime Minister Day, so Trudeau ends up staying there for the whole question period. And just with the way the vote went on yesterday, that I think that's going to be a topic of conversation. What about the vote? Chris Johnson mentioned. What vote? What are you talking about? Data? But yeah, tomorrow we're going to be a lot more busy. We're going to have some committees to cover tomorrow as well. Today we're not covering any committees. We didn't cover any this morning because I didn't think they were going to be anything that we wanted to watch, which it turns out I was kind of right there. There is a committee going on after this that I'd like to watch, but they're in camera. And it's the Finance Committee, and Chrystia Freeland's going to be there, but they're not showing it to the public. Can you schedule the streams? Yes, I'm going to do that right after this. I'll make sure that I try to get them up earlier. The budget vote for the new spending. Oh, right. Yeah, that'll be later today. But that'll pass. The Liberals and NDPs are going to vote together with that budget. So. The Bloc will even vote with it too, because the Bloc just wants money. That's really it. They argue about how much money they should be getting, but the Bloc always votes just to get money. But yeah, tomorrow will be really spicy. We'll have a few live streams. I'll double check to make sure which ones are good for committees, and then I'll put the schedule out, and I'll schedule the streams a little bit earlier so we know which ones are. I watched a committee earlier today, but it was a snooze fest. Yeah, I figured the ones this morning were going to be a snooze fest. I'd really like to watch the Finance Committee, but it's too bad they're in camera today, so we can't see it. But yeah, anyways, guys, I'm going to take off, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be really spicy, as I said, so it'll be a fun-packed day tomorrow. And we only have about a week left. They are done a week from today. They get about a month break, so you guys know we won't be live streaming pretty much at all for almost a month. I'll be keeping up with clips, and I'll be keeping up with some of the conferences and stuff that they do. That's what I'm going to go watch right now. Apparently, when Freeland spoke about 4 hours ago, she got roasted by reporters for the comments Trump's been making. She kind of said a funny reply, so I'm going to go get a clip of that out on the channel. That would be awesome. It would help to know when you're on. Yeah, I know. I do try to post in the community tab. I do post memes with it, but I do try to post what I'm doing the next day usually. I do that a couple times in the week usually. So, but yeah. Again, I appreciate everybody watching. You guys are awesome in chat. I appreciate the extra, memberships and super chats and stuff. But watching and subscribing is always a great way to just help the channel. And you guys make it easy because you guys are awesome in chat. So. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Cheers, guys.